The morning I came home from a 12-hour shift at the community health center, there were two suitcases on the front porch. Mine. Graham stood in the doorway with his mother behind him. Vivian had her coat on, her purse under her arm, her chin tilted the way it always tilted when she was about to cut someone out of her life. 6 years of nothing, she said. That's what you gave my son. I looked past her at Graham. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And in the driveway, sitting in the passenger seat of his truck with the window cracked, a young woman was checking her phone. But 3 houses down, the quiet man mowing his lawn had already noticed the suitcases. And before the year was over, he would unravel 6 years of lies, every single one of them starting with her. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. My name is Myra Townsend. I was 34, a registered nurse in a small Virginia town, and I'd spent 6 years married to a man whose mother decided I was defective. This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I needed and found out the truth had been locked in a filing cabinet the whole time. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, drop a comment below. And be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss what happens next. I set my bag down on the porch. The suitcases were already zipped. Vivian had packed them herself. I could tell by the way the corners were folded. She always folded corners like she was wrapping a gift for someone she didn't like. Graham shifted his weight. He still wouldn't look at me. Mom arranged the paperwork, he said. It's better this way. I asked for an explanation. Not because I expected honesty, but because I wanted to see if either of them could say it to my face. Vivian did. She stepped forward, heels clicking on the porch tile, and said it clearly. My son deserves a future. You can't give him one. 6 years, Myra. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. I looked at the driveway again. The girl in the truck was young, 22, maybe 23. She was wearing a Holt Motors polo. I didn't ask who she was. I already knew. I'd been a nurse long enough to read a room. The diagnosis was obvious. Graham had been coming home late for months. The cologne shifted from his usual to something sharper. And now his mother was standing on my porch at 7 in the morning, divorce folder in hand, with the replacement already idling in the truck. I picked up both suitcases. They were heavier than they should have been. She'd packed my nursing textbooks too, stacked at the bottom like ballast. Like she wanted me to feel the weight of being nothing but a career. I walked to my car without turning around. I didn't cry in front of them. I didn't give Vivian that. The engine started on the first try. Small mercy. I pulled out of the driveway and didn't check the mirror. 6 years. I'll walk you through them fast, the way they felt when I lived them. Year 1, we were hopeful. Graham and I got married in the spring. Small ceremony. Vivian paid for everything and reminded us twice. By Christmas, no pregnancy. Give it time, the doctor said. Year 2, Vivian insisted we see someone specific. Dr. Leland Fry, OBGYN, ran the only women's clinic in Barton. He was a friend of hers from college. The best, she said. Dr. Fry ran tests, hormone panels, ultrasounds, blood work. He sat me down and told me my ovarian reserve was diminished, that my chances were low and dropping. I remember the fluorescent light buzzing above his desk when he said it. Year 3, I wanted a second opinion. I'd been reading medical journals at the health center on my lunch break, the way nurses do when something doesn't sit right. Vivian moved fast. She arranged another specialist, a colleague of Fry's in Lynchburg. Same result. Same language. Diminished. Low. Unlikely. Year 4, treatments. Hormones that made me sick. Shots that left bruises on my stomach. Graham watched from the doorway, arms crossed like he was waiting for a verdict. Year 5, I called a fertility clinic in Charlottesville on my own, made an appointment. 3 days later, Graham told me he'd canceled it. Mom already took care of it, he said. Stop torturing yourself. I didn't fight him on it. Not because I was weak, because every door I tried to open, someone had already locked from the other side. The system around me was airtight, and I didn't know yet that the air inside was poison. Year 6, Graham started coming home after midnight. I stopped asking where he'd been. I was too tired to fight a war on 2 fronts. Gail Perkins was the only person I trusted completely. We'd worked together at the Barton County Community Health Center for 8 years. She was a medical coder, sharp-eyed, built like she could weather anything, and she had a way of saying hard truths without making them sting worse than they already did. The morning I showed up at her door with 2 suitcases, she didn't ask questions. She made coffee and sat me down. "I heard a rumor last month," she said. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you." She pulled up a photo on her phone. A Holt Motors dealership event, some ribbon cutting or anniversary, the kind of thing Graham's family threw every quarter. Graham stood in the center, arm around a young woman in a red dress. Kelsey Brewer, 23, marketing intern. Behind them, Vivian Holt, smiling like she'd just closed a deal. "That's from 6 weeks ago," Gail said. I looked at the photo for a long time. Not at Graham, at Vivian. Her smile in that picture was the same one she'd had on my porch that morning. The replacement wasn't a surprise. The replacement was a plan. "You can stay here," Gail said. "The spare room's clean." I shook my head. I need my own space, even if it's small. Gail didn't push. She topped off my coffee and handed me the classified section. Apartments in Barton. Most were too expensive on a nurse's salary alone, but at the bottom of the page, circled in red from a previous renter's search, there was a listing. Cottage, Orchard Road, furnished, $650 per month. I tore the page out, folded it, and put it in my pocket. 2 weeks before the suitcases on the porch, I'd been standing in the upstairs hallway of the Holt house, carrying Vivian's evening blood pressure medication on a small tray. She took it at 8 sharp, every night, and I brought it because I was the nurse and because in that house, being useful was the only currency I had. The study door was ajar. I heard Vivian's voice first. Low, direct, the way she spoke when she was giving orders, not asking. "You've wasted 6 years on that woman, Graham. 6 years I can't get back." Then Graham. "She's my wife, Mom. She can't give you children. And I will not watch this family die with you." A pause. I could hear the grandfather clock in the foyer ticking. Vivian continued. "I've already spoken to the Brewers. Their daughter Kelsey. You've met her. Young. From a good family. Healthy." Healthy. The word landed like a slap through the door. "You have a choice," Vivian said. "File the papers, or I transfer the trust. All of it. The dealerships, the houses, the foundation accounts. Everything goes to the charitable fund. You'll have nothing. Not the house. Not the car. Not the pocket money you call a salary." Graham didn't answer. That silence was his answer. I backed away from the door, set the tray on the hallway table, walked to the bathroom, turned on the faucet, splashed cold water on my face, looked in the mirror. And then I went downstairs and finished making dinner, because that's what I did. That's what I always did. I held everything together for people who were already planning to throw me away. The cottage on Orchard Road was old, with a sloped front porch and windows that stuck in the humidity. The landlord, Mr. Beale, handed me the keys and apologized for the water pressure. "It's not much," he said, "but it's yours." I moved in with 2 suitcases and a box of textbooks. The first night, I sat on the porch with a cup of instant coffee and watched the sky turn violet behind the tree line. The air smelled different here. Not Vivian's Chanel, not the antiseptic of the clinic. Magnolia. The neighbor's yard had one. A massive southern magnolia, the kind that blooms heavy in May, filling the air with something sweet and thick and alive. The house attached to that tree was modest but kept. A man came out around 7 to mow the lawn. Early 40s, quiet build. He moved the mower in straight, efficient lines, the way someone does when they've been doing things alone for a long time. He looked up, saw me on the porch, and lifted a hand. "Evening," he said. Nothing else. He finished, rolled the mower back into the garage, and went inside. I asked Mr. Beale about him the next day when he came by to check the water heater. "That's Wyatt. Wyatt Calloway. Used to be the sheriff. County sheriff. Not town. Retired a few years back after his daddy passed. Keeps to himself mostly. Quiet type. I nodded. Quiet was fine with me. That night, I sat on the porch again. Same instant coffee. Same magnolia scent drifting across the yard. But this time, it didn't feel like I was sitting in someone else's leftovers. It felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in 6 years. In a town of 18,000, news doesn't travel. It arrives. By Monday, the Barton version of my divorce was fully formed. Poor Graham Holt, trapped for 6 years with a barren wife, finally set free to find happiness. I heard it at the pharmacy when Mrs. Donnelly, Vivian's friend from the women's club, the one with the pearls and the habit of speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear, said, "I heard about the divorce, dear. These things happen. Some bodies just aren't made for it." I thanked her for her concern. I paid for my toothpaste and left. I heard it at the grocery store checkout. The cashier, a girl who couldn't have been older than 20, asked if I was the one whose husband was dating that pretty intern. She didn't mean harm. She was just filling silence. In Barton, the Holts filled everything. At the health center, my supervisor, Dr. Smith, pulled me aside. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and absolutely no patience for gossip. "I heard the nonsense going around," she said. "I don't care. You're the best RN on this floor. Focus on your patients." I nodded. I opened a chart. I checked vitals. I administered a flu shot to a 70-year-old man who told me I had steady hands. 12 years of nursing, I told him. That's what it teaches you. How to be calm when everything around you isn't. It was the truth, and it was the only thing holding me together. The town could talk. Vivian could spin whatever story she wanted. I had a job, a cottage, and hands that didn't shake. For now, that was enough. Saturday morning, the kitchen window jammed. Humidity had swollen the frame overnight, and no amount of pulling would move it. I was standing on a step stool, both hands on the sash, when I heard a knock on the screen door. Wyatt Calloway stood on my porch, hands in his jacket pockets. "Those frames swell every June," he said. "Here." He stepped inside, pressed both palms flat against the upper corners of the frame, and lifted. The window slid open with a grudging squeak. 30 seconds, maybe. "Thank you. Coffee?" He shrugged, which I took as yes. We sat on the porch. He drank his black. He talked a little, more than I'd expected. He'd been sheriff for 8 years, he said. Retired early. Didn't love the politics. His father had passed 3 years ago. He was a complicated man. Built something big but missed everything small. He didn't elaborate and I didn't push. I told him I was a nurse. He asked about the health center, about the kind of patients I saw. He asked good questions, the kind that came from actually listening, not from trying to get to the next topic. So I told him, not everything, but enough. "My husband's family says I can't have children," I said. "That's why he left." Wyatt set his mug down. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Who diagnosed you?" "A doctor here in town. Dr. Fry." Something shifted behind his eyes. Subtle. Like a filing cabinet opening and closing. "If you ever want a second opinion from someone who doesn't owe the Holts anything," he said, "I might know a place." He didn't push. He stood, thanked me for the coffee, and walked back across the yard. The magnolia tree between our houses was just starting to bloom. 3 nights I lay awake thinking about what Wyatt said. I might know a place. Not, "I can help you." Not, "Let me fix this." Just a door, left open, for me to walk through if I chose. On the 4th night, at 2 in the morning, I picked up my phone and searched. Patient Rights Medical Records, Virginia. The answer was clear. Under HIPAA, I had the legal right to request my complete medical file from any provider. I'd known this technically. Every nurse does. But knowing a thing and acting on it are separated by a canyon, and the bridge was built from the same question that had kept me awake. What if they were right? What if there was nothing to find? I put the phone down, stared at the ceiling. Then I picked it up again and typed the number for Barton Women's Health. At 8:15 the next morning, I called. The receptionist sounded surprised. "I'll need to check with Dr. Fry," she said. "It's my legal right," I told her. "I'll put the request in writing." She said she'd process it. I hung up and called Wyatt. "That place you mentioned, I'd like to go." "I'll make a call," he said. "No drama, no speeches." On my drive to work, I passed the Holt Motors billboard at the intersection of Route 11 and Maple. Graham's face, 10 feet tall. Family values, fair prices. Below it, in smaller type, Barton's trusted name since 1972. I kept driving. The light turned green and I didn't look back. Wyatt drove. An hour and a half to Richmond, most of it through green Virginia hills, windows down, the kind of drive where you can feel the air change from small town to city. I expected a regular clinic. Something clean, competent, unremarkable. We pulled into a campus, glass and limestone, 3 buildings connected by covered walkways, a fountain in the central courtyard. The sign at the entrance read, "Callaway Medical Group, Center for Reproductive Excellence." I looked at Wyatt. "Callaway, like your last name?" "My father built it," he said. "I chose a different path." He didn't say anything else about it. Inside, the lobby was bright and quiet. A woman at the reception desk greeted Wyatt by name, first name, and led us to a private consultation room. Dr. Priya Anand, reproductive endocrinologist, walked in 10 minutes later. She was poised, direct, and she shook my hand like I was a person and not a problem. "Let's start fresh," she said. "Forget what anyone told you before. We're going to run a full panel. Blood work, hormone levels, ultrasound, AMH, everything from zero." I nodded. For the first time in 6 years, a doctor was looking at me without Vivian's shadow standing behind her. The blood draw took 15 minutes. The ultrasound was thorough. Dr. Anand wrote notes by hand. Actual notes, not checkboxes. When we checked out, I reached for my insurance card. The woman at the desk shook her head. "It's covered." I looked at Wyatt. He shrugged. "Old family account." We drove home with the windows down. Magnolia scent from somewhere along the interstate median, thick and familiar. I closed my eyes for the last 20 miles and let myself breathe. While I was sitting in a consultation room in Richmond, Graham was sitting in a booth at Vittorio's on Main Street, Barton's only restaurant with cloth napkins. Gail told me later she'd been 2 tables away with her husband, celebrating their anniversary. Graham had ordered the most expensive bottle on the list. Kelsey Brewer sat across from him, a young woman with straightened hair and careful makeup, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked happy. Why wouldn't she? She was 23, dating the most eligible man in town, and his mother had personally approved. Vivian arrived 20 minutes in. She walked to the booth like she was inspecting a property. Gail said she studied Kelsey the way someone appraises a horse at auction: teeth, posture, carriage. "You come from the Brewers in Barton?" Vivian asked. Kelsey nodded, eager. "Yes, ma'am. My mother went to Emory." "Good stock," Vivian said. Then she turned to Graham, lowered her voice, but Gail was close enough to catch it. "Give it 6 months. If she doesn't conceive, we'll try someone else." Gail said Graham flinched. Just barely. The kind of flinch that meant he'd heard something he didn't want to hear but wouldn't fight. Kelsey didn't catch it. She was too busy smiling. I heard all this later, sitting on Gail's couch, holding a mug of tea that had gone cold. "She said that?" I asked. "Try someone else?" "Like she was rotating inventory," Gail said. She was disgusted. So was I. But underneath the disgust, something else was taking shape. A thought I didn't have words for yet. If Vivian was already planning to replace the replacement, then the problem had never been me. The call came on a Tuesday. I was at the health center, restocking supply cabinets in exam room 3, when my phone buzzed. Callaway Medical Group. I stepped into the break room and closed the door. Dr. Annan's voice was measured, clear. "Myra, your results are in. Your AMH levels are within normal range. Your ovarian reserve is healthy. Your hormone panel is consistent with a woman your age who has no fertility impairment. I sat down on the break room chair. The vinyl squeaked under me. Your ultrasound showed normal follicle development. There is no indication, none, of diminished reproductive capacity. I stared at the poster on the wall. Hand hygiene. 5 steps. I'd read it 1,000 times. What does that mean exactly? I asked. I knew. I was a nurse. I'd spent 12 years reading lab results. But I needed to hear a doctor say it. A real doctor. One who didn't owe Vivian Holt a single thing. It means, Dr. Anand said, that based on everything we've tested, there is no medical reason you cannot conceive. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat there for a while. The break room clock ticked. The coffee maker gurgled. 6 years of being told I was broken. 6 years of Vivian's pity. 6 years of Dr. Fry's careful, lying voice. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a pen. Tore a page from the notepad by the microwave. Wrote down the date and the results. Folded the paper twice. Put it back in my pocket. I didn't call Graham. I didn't call Vivian. I went back to exam room 3 and finished restocking the cabinets, because that's what steady hands do. The manila envelope arrived 3 weeks after my written request. It was thick, heavier than it should have been for one patient's file. I set it on the kitchen table of my cottage and stared at it while the kettle boiled. Barton Women's Health, the return address said. Dr. Leland Fry, MD. I opened it carefully. The pages inside were organized by date, earliest first. Consultation notes in Dr. Fry's handwriting. Small, tight script, the kind that looks precise until you try to read it. Lab reports on clinical letterhead. Ultrasound images printed on thermal paper, already fading. I spread them across the table and started reading the way I'd read a patient file at work. Systematically. Date. Test ordered. Results. Notes. Cross-reference. I was looking for the story the numbers told, not the story I'd been told. The FSH level Dr. Fry had flagged as concerning during our consultation. I found the original printout. The lab value was 6.8 milli-international units per milliliter. Normal. Well within range. But someone had written a handwritten annotation in the margin. 14.2. Elevated. Recheck. That wasn't the lab's handwriting. That was Fry's. He'd altered the number. I kept going. The AMH result he'd told me was low. The printed report showed a value that any nurse would call adequate. Another annotation. Another alteration. My hands didn't shake. They never do. But my jaw tightened, and I had to set the page down and stand up and walk to the window. The magnolia tree was dark against the evening sky. I walked back to the table. I kept reading. I reached a lab report near the middle of the stack, and I stopped. I sat at that kitchen table for 3 hours. Every page I turned made the picture clearer and uglier. If you've ever trusted someone with your health and wondered later if they told you the truth, you know the feeling in your stomach right now. Stay with me, because what I found on that next page changed everything. Like this video and subscribe if you want to hear what happened when the medical board opened their investigation. The lab report was for a comprehensive fertility panel, blood work, hormone analysis, the whole battery. The letterhead was from Barton Women's Health. The stamp at the bottom showed the collection date and time, and the date read, Sunday, March 12th, 2023. I set the page on the table. I know Barton Women's Health. I've referred patients there for 12 years. I know their hours the way I know my own shift schedule. They open Monday through Saturday. They are closed on Sunday. They have always been closed on Sunday. No exceptions, no weekend overflow, no special appointments. I pulled up the clinic's website on my phone. Hours of operation, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Closed Sundays and federal holidays. I looked at the report again. Sunday, March 12th. A blood draw that could not have happened, at a clinic that was not open, producing results that were used to tell me I was broken. This wasn't a mistake. A nurse knows the difference between a clerical error and a fabrication. A wrong date is a typo. A complete lab panel with values, annotations, and a signature, dated on a day the facility was locked, is a forgery. Someone sat at a desk, created this document, and filed it in my chart. Someone with access to the letterhead, the stamp, and a reason to make sure the numbers told a specific story. I set the page down carefully. I photographed every page in the file with my phone, front and back. I put the originals back in the manila envelope. I sealed it. I wrote the date on the front in pen. Then I opened my laptop and searched. How to file a complaint with the Virginia Board of Medicine. I didn't call Graham. I didn't call Vivian. I didn't call Dr. Fry. I made myself a cup of tea and started reading the complaint form, line by line, the way I'd read a chart. The magnolia tree outside the window was still. The house was quiet. But the manila envelope on the table felt like it weighed 40 pounds. Dr. Annan called again 4 days later. She had reviewed the records I'd sent her, my file from Barton Women's Health, alongside the new results from Callaway. She was careful in what she said. Clinically precise. Myra, I need to ask you something. Did your husband ever undergo a semen analysis as part of your fertility workup? Dr. Fry told us Graham's results were normal, I said. That the issue was mine. A pause. Then, based on the discrepancies I'm seeing between Dr. Fry's documented findings and our independent testing, the pattern suggests the diagnostic focus may have been misdirected. Deliberately, the alterations in your file are consistent with an effort to redirect the source of the reproductive difficulty. She didn't say Graham was infertile. She couldn't, without testing him. But the implication was clear enough for a nurse to translate. The evidence in my chart had been manufactured to point the blame at me, and the only reason to do that was to protect someone else. I thanked Dr. Anand. She told me she'd document everything and make herself available if the board needed a clinical opinion. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table, 2 folders in front of me. On the left, my new results from Callaway. Normal, healthy, capable. On the right, 6 years of lies from Barton Women's Health. Altered numbers, forged dates, a diagnosis built on nothing but someone's need to protect the Holt name. Everything they told me was a lie. Every injection, every hormone pill that made me sick. Every night I lay awake wondering what was wrong with my body. All of it, engineered. I closed both folders, stacked them together. And for the first time, I wasn't angry at myself for believing it. I was angry at the people who made it believable. Gail's husband, Warren, worked in the Barton County Clerk's office. He had access to public financial filings, the kind of records that nonprofits and family trusts are required to file annually. I asked Gail if Warren could pull the Holt Family Trust's charitable disbursement reports. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Gimme 2 days." Warren came through. 6 years of annual filings, neatly tabulated, and buried in each one, under Community Health Partnerships, a line item payable to Barton Women's Health. The amounts: $8,000 the first year, $10,000 by year 3, $12,000 by year 5. Steady, increasing, and far beyond anything a standard patient-clinic relationship would justify. "That's not a health partnership," I said. "That's a retainer." Gail looked at the numbers. "Vivian's been paying Fry for 6 years, the same 6 years he's been telling you that you can't have children." We were sitting at her dining table. Her kids were asleep upstairs. The house smelled like laundry detergent and the leftover chicken from dinner. Normal life, happening around the edges of something profoundly abnormal. I photographed the documents, added them to my growing folder. On the drive home, I felt my stomach turn. Not from anger. Something else. A familiar heaviness, low and insistent. I'd been tired for weeks, a specific kind of tired. I pushed the thought aside. Not yet. Not now. At home, the charity gala invitation sat on my kitchen counter. Vivian's handwriting on the envelope. Mrs. Graham Holt. She'd used my married name. Whether out of carelessness or cruelty, I couldn't tell. For a moment, I imagined walking into that gala with every document in my hands, the room going silent. Vivian's face. Then I set the invitation down. That was her arena, not mine. What I'm about to tell you, I learned later. Pieces from Warren's records, from Dr. Fry's eventual testimony, from things Graham said when everything was too far gone to lie about anymore. But I'm telling it now because it matters. Because even people who do terrible things have reasons, and understanding the reason doesn't excuse the act. It just makes it real. Late one evening, Vivian Holt sat alone in her study. The house was quiet. Graham was out with Kelsey. The housekeeper had gone home. Vivian opened the bottom drawer of her desk, the one she kept locked. Inside, under a stack of trust documents, was a small plastic bracelet. Baby boy Holt, 28 weeks, 2 pounds 3 ounces. She held it. The plastic was cracked with age. The ink had faded to a ghost. Graham had been born 14 weeks early. The doctors told Vivian he might not survive the night. He did. But they also told her she could never have another child. Graham was it, the beginning and the end of the Holt line. When Vivian commissioned Dr. Fry to run a private fertility workup on Graham before the wedding, without Graham's knowledge, and the results came back showing severe deficiency, Vivian made a choice. She buried the report. She told Graham the lab had lost the sample, and she decided that whatever woman Graham married, that woman would bear the blame. Part of her clung to a fragile justification. Premature infants sometimes carried transient reproductive complications that resolved with age. The report might not be final. The numbers might improve. And if the next woman still couldn't conceive, well, that only proved the problem was hers. Not Graham's. Never Graham's. Her hand trembled around the bracelet. "He's all I have," she whispered. For one moment she was not a villain. She was a 63-year-old woman terrified of watching her only child's bloodline end. Then she put the bracelet back, locked the drawer, picked up her phone, and called Dr. Fry. "Have you received any record requests lately? Any inquiries?" Her voice was sharp again. The heels of her shoes clicked on the tile as she paced. "Make sure there are no problems, Leland. I'm counting on you." 3 weeks until the gala. The invitation still sat on my counter, untouched, next to the manila envelope that now held 2 folders, 6 years of financial records, and a timeline I'd written on a legal pad with a red pen. I went to Wyatt's porch that evening. We'd been spending more time together, not romantic yet, not officially, but real. He made dinner most nights. Simple food, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, bread from the bakery on Elm. We ate on his porch with the magnolia tree filling the air between us. I told him what I'd found. All of it. The Sunday report, the altered hormone values, the financial trail from the Holt Trust to Fry's clinic. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. The crickets were loud. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I looked at the gala invitation in my mind. I could see it so clearly. Walking through those double doors, evidence in hand, Vivian at the podium, 200 people watching. "Part of me wants to walk into that gala and lay it all out in front of everyone," I said. "And the other part?" The other part was the part of me that had spent 12 years as a nurse. The part that knew that the most important decisions aren't made in front of an audience. They're made in quiet rooms, with documentation, through proper channels. "The other part knows that's exactly what she'd want," I said. "A scene. Something she can spin into, poor bitter Myra causing drama. I'm not going to play on her court." Wyatt nodded slowly. "So what's the play?" I looked at the magnolia tree. The blossoms were full now, heavy on the branches. "I file a complaint, with the state, and I let the process do what the process does." Monday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open to the Virginia Board of Medicine complaint portal. The form was straightforward. Subject of complaint, name of practitioner, practice name and address, nature of complaint, description of events, supporting documentation. I typed Dr. Fry's name, his license number. I'd looked it up the night before. Barton Women's Health. And in the description field, I wrote it clearly. falsification of fertility diagnostic records over a 6-year period, including lab reports dated on days when the facility was closed, handwritten alterations to hormone panel values, and a pattern of financial payments from a third party that coincided with the duration of the falsified treatment. I attached the photographs, the Sunday report, the altered FSH annotations, the trust disbursement records, the new results from Callaway Medical Group for comparison. I read the complaint 3 times, checked every date, every attachment. Then I submitted it. The screen flashed a confirmation number. I wrote it down on the legal pad next to my keyboard. I closed the laptop, made coffee, stood at the window. The morning light was warm through the glass. The magnolia tree was still. I'm not going to give her a scene. I'm going to give her a process. That's what I told myself. And I meant it. Vivian had spent 6 years controlling the story, choosing the doctors, choosing the narrative, choosing who was broken and who was whole. She operated in the world of emotion, leverage, and social pressure. I was done playing in that world. The Board of Medicine doesn't care about social standing. It doesn't care about the Holt name. It cares about records, evidence, and whether a licensed physician did what the license requires. That was my arena now. I didn't see what happened next, but Dr. Fry told the board everything eventually, and the board told my attorney, and the picture filled in. 2 weeks after I submitted the complaint, a certified letter arrived at Barton Women's Health, Board of Medicine letterhead. Dr. Leland Fry, MD, opened it in his office with the door closed. He read it twice. His hands shook, a detail he later admitted under oath, though he didn't need to. The receptionist heard him knock his coffee mug off the desk. The letter outlined the complaint. It requested all patient records related to Myra Townsend. It informed him that a formal investigation had been opened and that an auditor would be scheduled within 30 days. He picked up his phone and called Vivian. "Someone filed a complaint," he said, "with the board. They're asking about the Townsend records." Vivian's response was immediate. "Who filed it?" "I don't know. The complaint is confidential." A pause. Then the sound I imagined 100 times. Vivian's heels on the tile floor of her study. Click, click, click. Pacing. "Destroy the originals," she said. "I can't." Fry's voice cracked. "They've already been subpoenaed. And the third-party lab in Charlottesville? The one that processed the original blood work. They still have the original electronic records. Virginia requires labs to retain test results and source data for 7 years. Silence from Vivian's end. Then, "This is manageable, Leland. It's a small-town board complaint. I know people on committees." "This isn't a committee vote," Fry said. "They're going to audit my entire practice. Every patient file, every billing record." He hung up before Vivian could respond. It was, I learned later, the first time in 20 years that Dr. Fry had hung up on Vivian Holt. I came home from work on a Thursday, and Vivian's silver sedan was parked in front of my cottage. She stood by the door in a cream-colored coat, her purse under her arm, looking at my small porch, the way someone looks at a restaurant they'd never eat at. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About whatever nonsense you've been stirring up." I unlocked the door and let her in. Offered coffee. She looked at the instant coffee jar on the counter and said no. She scanned the kitchen. The mismatched cups, the small table, the magnolia tree framed in the window. Everything about the look on her face said, "This is what you chose over my son." "Drop whatever complaint you've filed," she said. "I'll make it worth your while. The divorce settlement can be reconsidered. Significantly." I leaned against the counter. "I haven't filed anything, Vivian." She studied me, trying to read whether I was lying. I gave her nothing. My hands were steady. My voice was even. She shifted tactics. "Myra, I know things have been difficult, but you need to think about what you're doing. This town is small. People talk. And the Holt name carries weight here that you can't imagine." "I can imagine it fine," I said. "I lived under it for 6 years." Her jaw tightened. Then, "You've wasted 6 years of my son's life. Don't waste any more of mine." I almost smiled. Almost. "Funny," I said. I was thinking the same thing. She left. Her heels sounded different on the way out, faster, less measured, the rhythm of someone who came for control and left without it. I locked the door behind her and made myself a cup of that instant coffee. It tasted fine. The following week, a man in a charcoal suit walked into the Barton County Community Health Center and asked to speak with the administrator. His name was Dale Everett, from a law firm in Richmond, and he represented the Holt family. He expressed concerns about an employee whose personal legal disputes might be affecting patient confidence. The implication was clear: fire Myra Townsend, or face the inconvenience of the Holt family's displeasure. Dr. Smith called me into her office. Before I could sit down, the door opened again. Wyatt walked in. He wasn't wearing flannel. He had on a navy blazer, pressed shirt, and the kind of posture that filled a room without raising a voice. He addressed the lawyer directly. I'm Wyatt Calloway. Calloway Medical Group retains Mitchell and Associates for employment matters across Virginia. If you're here to pressure a healthcare facility into terminating a registered nurse based on a pending regulatory investigation in which she is the complainant, not the subject, I'd encourage your client to reconsider before this becomes a retaliatory interference claim. He handed the lawyer a card. Everett looked at it, looked at Wyatt, looked at the card again. I'll relay your concerns, he said, and left without finishing his coffee. Dr. Smith watched him go. Then she looked at Wyatt. Calloway. As in Calloway Medical Group. The Calloway Medical Group. Wyatt nodded once. It's a long story. He looked at me. I should have told you sooner. About the family business. I left it behind a long time ago, but it's still mine. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing that mattered. Thank you. He held my gaze. You don't need to thank me, Myra. You filed the complaint. I just made sure nobody punished you for it. Wyatt handed that lawyer a business card, and I watched the confidence drain from his face like water from a cracked glass. In a town where the Holts thought they were royalty, Wyatt Calloway had just played a card nobody saw coming. And he wasn't done. If you've ever watched someone powerful realize they picked the wrong fight, keep watching, because it's about to happen on the biggest stage in Barton. Hit subscribe and stay with me. The board sent an investigator, Dr. Marion Chase, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain and no visible interest in small-town politics. She arrived in Barton with a briefcase and a subpoena and spent 3 days inside Barton Women's Health with the door closed. What she found, according to the eventual report: the third-party lab in Charlottesville still had my original electronic lab records, the raw instrument data, the accession logs, the unaltered results as they were first processed. Stored per Virginia regulation. Laboratory records retained for 7 years minimum. When the board's auditor compared the lab's original electronic results to the values in my clinic file, the numbers didn't match. The FSH, the AMH, the estradiol. All had been altered. The printed lab values were normal. The values in my chart were not. Additionally, Dr. Chase flagged the financial records. 6 years of payments from the Holt Family Trust to Barton Women's Health, categorized as community health partnerships, totaling over $60,000. No corresponding services rendered to the public. No grant applications filed. No program descriptions on record. Dr. Fry was called in for a preliminary hearing. He arrived with a lawyer from the same firm the Holts used, the same firm Wyatt had already neutralized at the health center. The board noted the conflict of interest. Vivian, meanwhile, was making calls. I heard about it from Gail, who heard it from Warren, who heard it from the clerk who processed the trust filings. Vivian called 3 members of the board's advisory committee. One of them told her gently, "Vivian, this is a formal investigation. I can't help you." Her heels clicked in her study that night. Faster, less controlled. The sound of a woman realizing that the machine she'd always been able to steer was now steering itself, and it was heading straight for her. I'd been ignoring it for weeks. The tiredness, the nausea that hit every morning between 7 and 8, sharp enough to make me grip the bathroom sink. The tenderness that made me change the way I crossed my arms. Nurses are the worst patients. We know exactly what's happening and we delay dealing with it because we're busy dealing with everyone else. But the body doesn't wait for permission. On a Saturday morning, I drove to a pharmacy in the next county, not Barton, where every purchase was public knowledge, and bought a test. 2 lines. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub. The tile was cold. The light was gray through the frosted window. 2 lines. Positive. I pressed my palms against my stomach. I didn't move for a long time. 6 years. 6 years of injections and pills and appointments and pity and shame and silence. 6 years of being told the fault was mine. And here I was, on the floor of a rented cottage, looking at 2 pink lines on a plastic stick, and the fault had never been mine. I called Dr. Annan that Monday. She confirmed it within the hour. Blood work, ultrasound, everything. "Congratulations, Myra," she said. And then, "Based on the ultrasound, you should know. It's twins." I drove home through a spring thunderstorm. The windshield wipers could barely keep up. But the magnolia tree on Orchard Road was in full bloom, and when I pulled into the driveway, the scent hit me through the cracked window. Heavy, sweet, overwhelming. Wyatt was on the porch. I told him. He held me. "I know a team," he said. "The best in the state. They'll take care of everything." Surrounded by an elite medical team. That's what the story would say later. But in that moment, it was just a man holding me in the rain, promising that this time, nobody would lie about who I was. In Barton, news leaks the way water finds cracks in old foundations, slowly at first, then all at once. The board investigation was technically confidential. But Dr. Chase had interviewed staff at Barton Women's Health. She'd pulled records from the county clerk. She'd contacted the Charlottesville lab. Each touchpoint was a person, and each person talked to someone. And within 2 weeks, the shape of the story had spread across town like fog. "Did you hear about Dr. Fry?" At the diner. "Something about falsified records." At the church picnic. "The Holt woman, Myra. She's the one who filed the complaint." At the grocery checkout, spoken by the same cashier who'd once asked me if my husband was dating the pretty intern. The narrative was turning. I could feel it in the way people looked at me at the health center, not with pity anymore, but with something closer to recalibration. Mrs. Donnelly, Vivian's closest friend, was notably silent. She'd stopped attending the women's club meetings. Graham heard the rumors, too. Gail told me he'd been seen at the library, of all places, using the public computer. She didn't know what he searched, but I could guess. He called Vivian. "Mom, what's going on? Someone said the board is investigating our family doctor." Vivian told him it was nothing. "I'm handling it." But for the first time, Graham didn't immediately accept her answer. Kelsey, meanwhile, was pulling away. She'd stopped posting photos with Graham. She'd started wearing her own clothes again instead of the wardrobe Vivian had bought. The gala was 1 week away. Vivian sent a mass email to the guest list. "We look forward to seeing our Barton community come together as always. The Holt family is grateful for your continued support." The email felt like armor. It was the sound of someone dressing for a battle she was about to lose. The Holt Family Foundation Annual Charity Gala. The Barton Community Center, dressed in Vivian's signature aesthetic. White roses in crystal vases, linen tablecloths, a string quartet playing Vivaldi in the corner. 200 guests, business owners, church elders, county officials, teachers, nurses, the women's club in their finest. This was Vivian's stage. The event she'd hosted for 22 years. The place where her name meant everything and everyone else was a guest in her world. She stood at the entrance in a pearl gray dress, greeting arrivals with the same measured smile she'd perfected over decades. "So glad you could come. How lovely to see you. Please, enjoy the evening." But her eyes kept moving to the door. Graham was already inside, standing near the bar with Kelsey. They looked like a magazine spread. Young, polished, expensive. But the distance between them was visible. Kelsey held her clutch with both hands. Graham held his drink with 2. People were polite to them. Nobody was warm. I hadn't planned to go. Not really. But Wyatt had said something that stuck. You don't have to make a scene. Sometimes showing up is the statement. So I went. I wore a simple blue dress. It was the nicest thing I owned, bought for a work banquet 2 years ago, and it fit differently now. At 4 months along, the pregnancy was visible. Not dramatic, just present. The way truth is. You can't hide it once it starts showing. I walked through the front doors. The room didn't go silent, but I felt the shift. Heads turning, whispers sharpening. The string quartet kept playing. Vivian saw me from across the room. Her smile didn't drop. It calcified. She walked toward me. Her heels on the polished floor were deliberate, each step measured. Myra, she said. How unexpected. Hello, Vivian, I said. 10 minutes after I arrived, the front doors opened again. Wyatt walked in. He was not the man who mowed his lawn in a faded flannel shirt. He wore a charcoal suit, tailored, with a white shirt and no tie. His posture was different. Not stiff, but occupied, like someone stepping back into a space he'd left a long time ago. Beside him, two people I didn't recognize. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and a quiet authority. A man around Wyatt's age in a suit that matched his in cut and cost. The MC, Jerry Pratt, who owned the hardware store and had emceed every Holt event since 2004, looked at Wyatt and fumbled his program card. He leaned into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored this evening to welcome a special guest, Mr. Wyatt Calloway, President and sole heir of the Calloway Medical Group, and members of the Calloway Foundation Board. The room did go silent then. 200 people holding wine glasses and small plates of shrimp, all turning toward the door. Calloway Medical Group, 12 hospitals, 40 clinics. Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia. A name that showed up on buildings, endowments, university wings. A name worth more than every Holt asset combined, and not by a little. Vivian's face went white. Not the polite pale of surprise. White. The color left her cheeks the way water leaves a cracked glass, fast and complete. The lonely sheriff next door. The man she'd dismissed without a second thought. The man whose lawn bordered the cottage she'd sneered at. He was standing in her gala, in her community center, surrounded by her guests, and every person in the room was looking at him with a recognition that made the Holt name feel very, very small. Wyatt walked to me. He put his arm gently around my shoulder. He nodded to the room the way you nod at a neighbor. He didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. The timing was not something I planned. I want to be clear about that. The board operates on its own schedule, and whatever that schedule was, it chose that evening. Graham's phone buzzed first. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and froze. The Barton Gazette had published an article 20 minutes ago. Local OB/GYN doctor Leland Fry suspended pending investigation into falsified medical records. Board sources confirm complaints related to fertility diagnostics. Financial irregularities linked to local family trust under review. He read it again. Then he looked across the room at Vivian. Mom. His voice carried. The string quartet had stopped playing. The cellist had been checking her own phone. What did you do? Vivian moved toward him. Not here, Graham. We'll discuss this at home. What did you do? He was louder now. People were watching. Phones were out. The article was spreading through the room the way Vivian's invitations used to, efficiently, reaching everyone. It was a medical matter, Vivian said. Leland made a mistake. I've already spoken to... A mistake? Graham's voice cracked. You told me she was the problem. You told me for 6 years that Myra was the reason we couldn't have children. You chose the doctor. You paid for everything. You told me. I did what I had to do to protect this family. You lied to me. The room was completely still. Vivian's composure broke. Not quietly. Her voice rose. She pointed at me. That woman is trying to destroy everything I built. Everything. And you're standing here. I stood 15 feet away. My hand rested on my stomach. I said nothing. My face said nothing. The loudest person in the room was the one who had lost control of it. Graham turned to me. His face was a wreck. Red, wet, shaking. Did you know? About the records? I found out, I said. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him. At the man who had cancelled my doctor's appointment in year 5 because his mother said she'd taken care of it. At the man who had handed me suitcases packed by someone else and called it better this way. Would you have believed me? I asked. You cancelled my appointment in Charlottesville because your mother told you to. You never once questioned her. Not once in 6 years. So tell me, Graham. If I had come to you with lab results and said your mother was paying a doctor to lie about me, would you have believed me? Or would you have believed her? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew. Vivian stepped forward. One last attempt. Her voice was lower now, stripped of performance. Myra, please, let's discuss this privately, for the family. I looked at her. At the woman who had stood on my porch and told me some women aren't meant to be mothers. At the woman who had spent $60,000 making sure a doctor would confirm it. There is no family, Vivian, I said. You made sure of that. I paused. Let the room hold its breath. 6 years of nothing. That's what you said to me. On my own porch, with my suitcases at my feet. But the nothing was never mine. It was always yours. Vivian sat down in the nearest chair. She didn't get up. Across the room, Kelsey Brewer picked up her clutch, turned toward the exit, and walked out without saying a word. Nobody stopped her. Nobody was looking at her anymore. Wyatt took my hand. We walked toward the door. I didn't rush. I didn't look at the floor. I looked at the room. The white roses Vivian had arranged, the crystal vases she'd polished, the string quartet that had stopped playing and was now packing up their instruments. I looked at the 200 people who had watched the Holt name define this town for 2 decades. I looked at Graham, standing alone at the bar, his phone still in his hand, staring at the article that had undone his mother's entire architecture. And I looked at Vivian, sitting in a wooden chair near the wall. Her hands were in her lap, her shoulders were curled inward, her heels were flat on the floor, still, not clicking, not pacing, not commanding, just still. I didn't say anything else. I'd said everything that mattered, and the board had said the rest. We walked out into the spring night. The community center had magnolia trees lining the path to the parking lot. They were in full bloom, heavy white blossoms, thick perfume, the kind of scent that fills your lungs and won't let go. I breathed it in. You okay? Wyatt asked. I squeezed his hand. I'm better than okay. We drove home with the windows down. The Virginia night was warm and dark and full of noise. Peepers in the ditches, wind in the oaks, the sound of a town that would wake up tomorrow with a very different story to tell. The aftermath came in stages, the way consequences do when the foundation has been cracked too deep to patch. Dr. Leland Fry's medical license was permanently revoked by the Virginia Board of Medicine. The audit of his practice revealed a pattern that extended beyond my case: altered records, incomplete documentation, billing irregularities spanning 15 years. The Commonwealth's attorney opened a criminal investigation. Fry was charged with felony falsification of medical records and fraud. His clinic, Barton Women's Health, closed permanently. The sign came down on a Tuesday. I drove past it on my way to work and felt nothing in particular. It was just a building now. Vivian Holt's role unraveled through the financial trail. The trust disbursements to Fry's clinic were reclassified as evidence of conspiracy. Graham, along with 2 other trust beneficiaries, filed a petition to remove Vivian as trustee. The Holt Family Foundation's tax-exempt status was placed under review. The Women's Club asked Vivian to step down as chair. Mrs. Donnelly delivered the message personally. I'm told it was brief. Graham didn't face criminal charges. He hadn't known about the falsification. Vivian had kept him in the dark as completely as she'd kept me, but his complicity was a different kind. The kind that comes from never asking questions when the answers might be uncomfortable. Without the trust funding, the Holt Motors dealerships began to struggle. Kelsey was already gone. Graham put the flagship lot up for sale 6 weeks after the gala and moved to a town in West Virginia where nobody knew his name. He never contacted me. I didn't expect him to. What would he say? What could he say? The town of Barton did what small towns do. It adjusted. The story shifted. Poor Myra became that nurse who filed the complaint. Dr. Smith pinned a note to the break room bulletin board at the health center. It said simply, "We're proud of you, Myra." Gail brought a casserole to the cottage. "For the babies," she said. Then she sat down and cried, because that's what real friends do when the hard part is finally over. We got married in October. 20 guests. Wyatt's backyard, under the magnolia tree, which was dropping its last leaves like confetti it had been saving. Gail stood next to me. Dr. Smith sat in the front row. Warren brought a camera. There were no white roses, no crystal vases, no string quartet. Just an afternoon, a minister from the Baptist church on Oak Street, and a man who looked at me like I was the only thing in the yard worth seeing. The twins came in December, a boy and a girl. Born at Callaway Medical Group's flagship hospital in Richmond, 37 weeks, healthy. Dr. Anand delivered them. The team, neonatologist, 2 nurses, an anesthesiologist on standby, was the best in the state, not because of wealth, because Wyatt's father had built those hospitals for exactly this reason, so that when it mattered most, the care would be there. I went back to work at the Barton County Community Health Center 8 weeks later. I didn't quit. I didn't move to a mansion. The cottage on Orchard Road was home, small, creaky, with windows that still stuck in the humidity and a porch that smelled like magnolia from April to September. Wyatt took a seat on the Callaway Medical Group board. Not as CEO. He'd never wanted that. But as a voice for community health, for clinics in small towns, for women who deserve to hear the truth from their doctors. Together, we funded a program through the Callaway Foundation, reproductive health advocacy for women who suspected their records had been falsified or their diagnoses manipulated. It was small. It was specific. It was ours. Some evenings, after the twins were asleep, I sat on the porch with a cup of real coffee, not instant anymore, and watched the magnolia tree sway in the dark. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was being told I couldn't have children. The worst thing was believing a lie about who I was. The best thing was finding out I was right all along. The people who tell you what you can't do are usually the ones who are afraid of what happens when you can. A Sunday-dated lab report, a manila envelope on a kitchen table, a magnolia tree that smelled like the life she almost lost. Myra Townsend didn't fight back with anger. She fought back with a process, a pen, and hands that never shook. If someone ever made you feel broken for something that was never your fault, share this story. Leave a comment. Tell me your moment, the one where you stop believing the lie, and subscribe to Calm Drama Stories, because the next story is already waiting.